Hello and welcome everyone to another exciting 3D Tudor geometry node which allows you to create bushes and any type of foliage shape in seconds. To start it off, all you need to do is simply create a new shape. This can be a simple primitive cube, cylinder, or any custom shape that you'd like. I'm going to start off with a simple cube like so, move it off to the side like this, and let's go on to the modifiers tab, get ourselves geometry node, select the bush geometry node like so. By default, geometry node comes with 3 preset type of leaves. It's made for more of an autumn look, for more summer type of vibes, as well as a mixture for a more natural type of setups. All you need to do is just simply select back onto the bush and grab yourselves one of the 3 preset leaves like so. And you're going to get yourself this shape. For this particular case, I'm going to lower down the scale of the leaves with this part over here to something more reasonable. And for density, we have 2 variables. We have viewport density and render density. The viewport density will allow you to preview the leaves, whilst the render density will give you the outcome of a rendered setup when you're rendering using camera. So I'm going to go ahead and just select both of them, set it to something more of a dense setup. Let's say to 150. I think that's going to give us a better preview. And right away, we can see the type of a setup we're going to get. So this is the cube that we had previously. We can go on to edit mode. We can still edit it. We can make it, for example, a bit wider if we want to. And that's going to, in real time, adjust the shape of the bush. If we want the shape to be visible only as a shape, if we don't want this kind of repetition, we can turn it off. We can just simply take down the repeat count to 1, and that's just going to give us a nice shape of the setup. Additionally to that, we have some other settings. So for example, if I increase it to a repeat count of 4, we can change the start scale and end scale. So if I was to change the end scale to 1, it's going to give us consistent type of a scale going upwards. We can also increase it to a value above that, to a value of 2, let's say, and that's going to start scaling upwards, just like that. I'm going to go back and change it back to a value of 0.5. And the starting scale, we can also change that to adjust and fine tune the overall setup of the repetition. Now let's go ahead and turn off the repeat count to 1. And let's talk a little bit about the subdivision and displacement. These 3 values will allow us to get a more natural type of an outcome. If we were to make something like a hedge wall, let's say I'm just going to move this outwards and upwards, like so, to get a nice luscious type of a wall. Let's say we want this to make it to be a little bit more organic. We can totally do so. All we need to do is just increase subdivision amount, which is going to subdivide this base mesh. And then we can use displacement scale and strength to adjust and tweak the displacement of the mesh. So if I was to increase this, for example, to quite a high amount, we can see that we're getting a much more organic and natural type of a setup. We can also, for example, maybe lower this down a little bit and basically get any type of shade that we want out of these parameters. Moving on, going back to the leaves, we touched a little bit about density and scaling. We also have controls over scale randomness. So that's going to make it even more organic. If we want to increase it, for example, or if we want more uniform, we can just set this to 0. And that's going to give us the same size of leaves. Offset is going to help us to just offset the spawn points of each individual leaf. If we set this to 0, that's just going to make it a little bit more uniform again. I'm going to change now the displacement back to 0, just to kind of show before and after. So with the offset randomness set to 0, it's going to look like this. If we start to change it, it's going to bring out each leaf back and forth to give that more of a natural look. Finally, within the leaves tab, we also have align to faces. This is ideally for more intricate shapes when we want to keep that overall conformity of a shape. If I was to increase this to a 1, you can see what it does. Changing it to a value of a 1 might not be ideal. So if I was to just lower this down to something like this, we can see how it's going to look like. And this is ideal for something like a Blender logo, for example. If we want to have a custom shape, we can totally make use out of this. So in this case, the value is set to a value of 0.87. And just like that, we're getting ourselves a really nice preview of the shape. And if I was to have this at 0, you can see that the shape itself ends up being a little too random. Moving on, we have trunk settings. By default, we're going to get ourselves 3D Tudor bark, a nice little preset. And if we want to see it a little bit for this, we can do so. We can get ourselves a Z offset. That's going to control how much of an offset it is for the trunk itself. You can see the bark going off on the side. The basic trunk type is going to be based on origin. So if you want this to be centered, you can just simply select the object, right click, set origin to geometry, and that's going to bring the piece back to the center. Then we can go ahead and just offset Z value, and you can see that now it's going to be growing from the centerpiece. Of course, this type of an object for a wall is not going to be quite right. Perhaps we want a little bit more in regards to that. But let's talk a little bit about the material first. So the material, you can control the material from the UV scale parameter over here. If we want this to be larger or smaller UVs, we can totally do so. And that's going to give us a really nice type of a preset of a bark. Of course, you can change it to a custom material as well. Or alternatively, I do recommend you go into the shading tab, and with the bark selected, you're going to have some really nice controls over the edge wear, the color, ambient occlusion, and how it interacts with the overall material itself. I really do recommend you playing around with these settings. It's going to give us a great value for any type of environment we desire. So let's go back to modeling now. And let's talk a little bit in regards to the trunk type. Trunk type, we have 3 presets: none, basic, and advanced. None will simply give you no support, no nothing. It's ideal for setting up walls and whatnot when we're placing the bushes directly on the ground, and they don't need any additional support. Afterwards, we have basic. Basic is just going to be directed from the origin point itself, and that's going to be great for simple basic type of bushes, as well as organic type of decorative types. Now, if we have a different type of mesh, the way the interaction of trunk type and between repetition works is this between repetition is going to simply help you out with the repetition count. So if we have this increased like so, we have ourselves nice support. But if we don't want them and want to have no spacing between, we can simply turn this off for the repetition. Then we can go ahead and just lower down the repetition spacing just like that. And it's going to give us a very, very nice and simple type of a shape without any additional of the geometry, just a little bit of optimization. Moving forwards, what we have in regards to branches, we have the noise strength and noise scale. These will allow you to give a more unique shape out of the trunk itself. So if I was to increase the strength, we can see what it does, and we can just play around and adjust this type of a shape to basically anything that we'd like ourselves to get. Maybe it's a little bit too strong, so let's lower it down and get ourselves a really nice type of a base trunk. We also have resolution, profile resolution. So this will allow you to control how much of the topology it is in between this. If we were to lower this to quite a small amount, we can see that it starts lowering this topology down. If we go to wireframe, maybe it's a little bit better to see. And by just playing around with these, we get ourselves the right amount of topology for basically any scene or environment that we want. So that's quite neat. Afterwards, we also have radius. So this will allow you to control the thickness of the branches like so, which is quite nice. And finally, the last piece that I left it off for the trunk type is going to be advanced. Trunk type advanced is going to give you a really nice control over more intricate shapes. If I was to grab a bit more of a complex shape, nothing too complex though, all this is a simple shape of a basic, maybe like a giraffe or something. We can go ahead and make use out of it. And then if we want to add some support onto it, all we need to do is just trunk type advanced, and it's going to give us the right amount of support. So maybe for this case, it's a little bit too high up. I want to lower this down. I can just lower this overall setup just like so. And we can see that the head over here is being supported as well. We don't really want that. We want to make sure that it's only supporting, for example, only the base or even the legs. We can make use out of the advanced branch trunk settings to have ourselves that additional control. So if I was to change it to 10 or maybe 5, there we go. It just starts lowering down, and whenever it's too high, it's going to stop supporting this part. And all in all, it's quite nice. Then we can just simply control the density, the amount of branches it's going to have. If we want this to be only on legs, we can also do so. We can lower this even further, maybe a little bit too much, like so. It's a little bit hard to see, so I'm just going to increase the density for now and then lower the maximum height until I get it only on its legs. Then afterwards, we can just lower the density to a more reasonable amount, so all the pieces and parts would be supported. We can also increase the extend. The extend will allow the branches to grow into the mesh itself. So you can see that before it was going to this amount, and afterwards we can make it grow into the part itself, then lower down the radius, and we're going to get ourselves a really nice and simple type of a setup. And of course, going back, we can even go and subdivide this a little bit, add some displacement just to make it a little bit more natural, perhaps, like so. And that's all it needs. This geometry node is one of many that we have over in our store. I really recommend you checking out our other products as well. Our previous one was a stylized oak tree generator. It allows you to create any type of tree shape, and it comes with already preset materials, which gives you an amazing control over the overall setup. So that's going to be it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and happy modeling, everyone.